When I was 5 years old, I was walking to preschool with my dad. I was holding his hand, and we were walking. There was this park on the way to school where my brother and I used to go and play regularly. We were walking, and I was looking at the park. And what happened was, I hit the corner of my eye into one of these parking bollards. You know, these black structures they put into pedestrian walkways to not allow cars to come in. I hit the corner of my eye. I immediately started bleeding. My dad, in panic mode, held me, carried me, ran all the way to the doctor's office. I got stitches. And I still have that mark as a reminder that that day I was curious to go to the park. A few weeks later, I was coming back home from preschool. So I was holding my dad's arm, and we were passing the park. And I was looking at the park again. And as you can guess, I hit the other corner of my eye into one of the parking bollards. My dad, in panic mode, held me, carried me, ran to the doctor's office. I got stitches. My mom was not happy. And I have another mark on the other corner of my eye as a second reminder. Now, I'm not here today to talk about the injuries that I've had in my life. I'm here to talk about curiosity and the empowerment in learning. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Leila Daneshmandi. I'm a PhD candidate in biomedical engineering, and I'm also the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of TEDxChristianHeritageSchool, a biotech startup that is working in the field of cancer therapy. At TEDxChristianHeritageSchool, we've developed automated biochips that can take a cancer patient's cells from when they're initially diagnosed with cancer, grow them outside the body in their native state, and test all the possible chemotherapy drugs that an oncologist may want to test to determine the most effective one from the very beginning and on an individualized basis. Because what happens currently in clinics now is that when a patient is diagnosed with cancer, the oncologist will choose the chemotherapy drug based on the type of cancer and what has worked well in previous patients. But what works well for one person may not necessarily work well for the other. And so that's why in ovarian cancer, for instance, the first round of chemotherapy fails in 70% of the cases. So the oncologist will try additional rounds of treatment each time with a new drug until they get some sort of response from the patient, or the patient passes away. And in all these unnecessary chemotherapy cycles, the patients are enduring unnecessary pain. With our biochips, we can determine the most effective drug from the very beginning on an individualized basis and avoid all these complications. So we're currently partnering with Hartford Healthcare to run our clinical studies on colon cancer patients, which is exciting. And we were recently awarded the Technology and Space Prize by the International Space Station in partnership with Boeing. And it'll allow us to send our technology into space on the International Space Station and test how cancer cells behave up there. So I'm going to be able to watch real astronauts work on technology that I built up there, and all the time I'm thinking, how did this happen? So let me back up a little bit. I said I'm a biomedical engineer. I've been a biomedical engineer for almost 10 years now. 4 years of undergrad, 3.5 because I was in a rush, I don't know why. 1 year at Temple University in Philadelphia, and then 5.5 here at UConn, where I've been for the past few years. And I am ashamed to say that until 2 years ago, and before TEDxChristianHeritageSchool, I had never stepped foot in a hospital to see what the issue is that patients are dealing with. I came into engineering because I love solving problems. But after 8 years in the field at the time, after all these studies and experience, I didn't even know what the problem was that I was supposed to solve. What kind of an engineer was I? And I didn't suddenly come to this realization. It happened when I took a course on entrepreneurship at UConn. The course was titled Technology, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship. I don't even know why I took the course, to be honest. I think someone told me about it. It's interesting. I took it. I was curious. And so in the course, we were paired into teams, and we were asked to identify problems to which we could provide solutions for. And I won't go into the full details, but that's kind of where Encapsulate was born. And in one of the programs that we participated in, we were asked to speak to potential users and customers of our technology. In our case, that means the oncologists, the patients, the pathologists, insurance companies, hospital procurement people. So when I say we were asked to speak to these people, I mean we were forced to speak to these people. I am not comfortable speaking to new people at all, but every week I would muster up all my courage and approach all these different individuals and set up a meeting. And I would ask what their work is like, what their challenges are, what they do in a day, what they wish could make their life easier. It's not that hard, right? It's just a few questions. But why hadn't I done it sooner? Again, 8 years in the field, and I had zero input from the people that my target was to help. Now, I don't even know why I did it, why I did all of it. I think, in general, that's how it is. I was curious. I was curious to go to the park. I was curious to take the class. I was curious to see what I could learn. I never thought that I would be pushing myself to these limits. I didn't even know what the limits were. An introvert who would cold call people to set up a meeting to talk, that's like our biggest nightmare. But I was eager. I was eager to learn. I was eager to grow. And I did it. I set aside all my personal insecurities, however hard it was, and I would throw myself out there. And when I say throw, I mean throw. So when we would get done with events or meetings or gatherings where we had to talk, afterwards I would just crawl on the couch under a blanket and not do anything for a while. So you have to have courage. It's hard, I know. It's so much easier to not do what you don't want to do, but it's so much more rewarding when you do. It's like ziplining for me. So I'm afraid of heights. Everyone knows that, my friends. But for some reason, I have this inkling to push myself. I love ziplining. So when I get on that platform, my hands start to sweat, like they are now. My knees start to shake, my mouth goes dry. And I think, why am I doing this? I mean, I even took a DNA test, a 23andMe test, and it said, you're more likely than average to be afraid of heights, okay? It's science. I'm afraid of heights. But then I pushed through. I mean, those black level, like the highest platforms, the most difficult ones, those I turn back. There's no way I'm doing that at this stage. But anyway, I pushed through because I enjoy standing on that platform, looking at the path ahead of me and trying to figure out what steps I need to take to solve the problem ahead of me. So, have courage. Have the courage to start. And it's not just about having courage, it's about wanting to grow, wanting to learn, wanting to try new things, wanting to experience life. If we don't know what's out there, how do we know where we're at is good? So you have to care. Care about yourself, what it is that you do. Care enough to give yourself the chance for something more. And that brings me to my second point. In addition to having courage and being curious, you have to be open and receptive. You have to listen. And not just listen to hear words come out of someone's mouth or listen to think of an answer to respond with. Listen to internalize. Take it in, whatever it is that the other person's saying. Take it in, think about it, reflect on it. It's not about the answer you give. It's about what you receive from it. When we first started Encapsulate, we were developing our biochips for a completely different purpose. But then when we were asked to talk to all those people, we realized that, oh, there's a problem in cancer therapy and chemotherapy that we could solve with our biochips. And so we talked, we listened, and we changed. And I've learned that everyone has something to say, even if I think I have the answer, or I've made up my mind about something. I could still be wrong. I could improve. I could learn. Back in undergrad, I used to go to this group discussion thing with a bunch of students, and we would just talk about our daily lives. And, honestly, it was just a grumble party. So everyone would come in and start complaining about something, their major, their coursework, their dorm, their dog. But then whenever it was my turn, I could only talk about the positive. So positive stuff, positive events, positivity. And a friend once told me, Leila, you're too positive. I fear that you're living in a fantasy and you're not seeing the world for what it is. I mean, it could be, right? It could be that I'm a happy bunny, I walk on air, and I'm having the time of my life. What happened after was, a few weeks later, one of the students came, and he said, I've been thinking, why is it that whenever it's our turn to talk, we always start by complaining? But then Leila over here is so content and gratified. Is it really that my life is so bad that the first things that I want to say to it about someone is the negative stuff? I mean, I like my major, I love my parents, I love my friends, we hang out a lot. Life is good. Life is good. And I'm not saying to, put on a smiley face and be happy all the time, forget about your worries. No. I'm saying, what's the alternative? Create your own fantasy, the world that you want to live in, the one within the limits of what you can do, and even beyond the limits of what you can do. Or in the words of Pinterest, bring your own sunshine. I think it's important to care. In addition to being courageous, to being brave, curious, to being open and receptive, you have to care. Care about yourself, care about others, care about cancer patients that you happen to know are enduring painful treatments. Care. Empathy is one of those traits that we need more of. I know it sounds cliche, but can you really put yourself in the shoes of someone else and try to understand or feel their experience? You may not agree with it. You may not do it yourself. You can't even support it. But can you understand why they did it? Can you listen? Back at Temple, when I'd first come to the States, I was feeling very subconscious academically. I wasn't sure of the stuff that I knew. I had just come to a new country. I was shy, uncomfortable. And I had this class with this instructor/advisor. And, you know, it happened to be that I knew the course stuff. I was doing okay. But whenever he would ask a question, I would never be the one to respond. I did not have the confidence to respond. What if I said the wrong thing? It would be too embarrassing. And it happened that a few times he would ask directed questions. And, you know, he asked questions directly at me. And, you know, it turned out that my answer was correct. And so after that, whenever he would ask the class a question, he would look at me as if he were waiting for me to answer the question. And then eventually his patience would run out, and he would say, "Leila, I know you know this. Why aren't you answering? I know you know this. Speak up. Why aren't you answering?" And, you know, I look back at this as one of those defining moments. Speak up. And you don't need someone else to tell you to speak up. You can tell it to yourself. You have to tell it to yourself. Be brave, be bold, make mistakes. We're supposed to. One of the lines that I've recently come across, and it's become one of my favorite lines, is to be brave. Be brave enough to be bad at something new. This semester, fall 2020, the instructor of that class, that technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship class that I took 2 years ago, where Encapsulate was born, contacted me and said, "Would you be willing to teach the course with me?" Now, I had no experience in teaching a course. I've mentored students, but a classroom, students sitting there listening to me, what I have to say, no. And then I came across the quote, "Be brave enough to be bad at something new." And I accepted it. I taught the course. I developed lectures, assignments, tasks, homeworks. And to be honest, I went in thinking that I wouldn't like it. I was ready to not like it. But I still did it. I persevered and I did it. And the first class was terrible. I came in late. I set up the computer late. Half the students were in person. Half of them were online. I didn't know where to stand, where to look, who to talk to. The mic wasn't working. It was just a disaster. And I was thinking, oh my God, how am I going to be able to do this for the next few weeks? And then 2 sessions later, I absolutely loved the class. I loved the students. I loved their questions, their thought processes. They were taking notes when I was talking. And they would call me Professor Leila, which was like the highlight. One person called me Professor Leila, but it's still the highlight. I went in with the preconception that I would dislike this, but I ended up loving it. I learned to love it. And you know, it's kind of full circle for me. I started in that course, shy, uncomfortable to talk, uncomfortable to share. I didn't know what an engineer was, what I was supposed to do with my degree, what I was supposed to do with my life. Would anyone ever benefit from my presence in the world? I mean, I don't have the answer to those questions now, but I've learned so much. I've learned to take on new experiences, to be brave, to be open and receptive, to listen, to be humble and kind, to be curious. I might have had that for a while. But most important of all, I've learned to never stop learning, to never stop myself from learning. Even when I'm at the end, when I think I'm at the end, there's always more. And so I want to leave you with one thing, or actually 3, let's make it fun. I want you to, after this, think of 3 things that you normally wouldn't do, that are uncomfortable, challenging, difficult, awkward, and be brave and give them a try. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to find the courage to start. Allow yourself the chance to learn.